The steam rising from freshly brewed coffee at the Copper Kettle Diner carried the same familiar rhythm it had for the past 3 years, until the sound of rotor blades shattered the peaceful Montana morning and changed everything Cassandra Brennan thought she had left behind forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning frost clung to the windows of the Copper Kettle Diner like delicate lace patterns, each crystalline formation catching the early sunlight that struggled to pierce through the November clouds hanging low over Millbrook, Montana. At exactly 5:47 a.m., Cassandra Brennan pushed through the back entrance of the diner, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the checkered linoleum floor that had seen better decades. Her dark auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and the slight limp in her left leg suggested someone who had learned to adapt to old injuries without complaint. The familiar scent of bacon grease and coffee grounds welcomed her like an old friend as she tied her apron around her waist with practiced efficiency. At 34, Cassie had the kind of face that invited trust-warm brown eyes that seemed genuinely interested when customers shared their troubles, and laugh lines that suggested someone who found joy in simple moments. Her uniform consisted of a faded blue dress with white trim that had been washed so many times the fabric felt like silk, comfortable shoes that could handle 12-hour shifts, and a name tag that simply read Cassie in cheerful red letters. Frank Donovan emerged from the kitchen carrying a fresh pot of coffee, his substantial belly straining against a grease-stained apron that proclaimed him world's best cook in bold letters that had faded to a gentle suggestion at 62. Frank had owned the Copper Kettle for nearly 2 decades, and his philosophy of generous portions and fair prices had made the diner a beloved institution among locals and travelers alike. His weathered face showed the contentment of someone who had found his calling in feeding people and creating a place where everyone felt welcome. "Morning, sunshine," Frank called out with his usual cheerful greeting, though his observant eyes caught the subtle tension in Cassie's shoulders that had been there for the past few weeks. "Got that truck convoy coming through around 8, so we'll be busier than usual. You feeling up for handling the breakfast rush?" Cassie smiled with genuine warmth as she began her opening routine of checking salt shakers and ensuring napkin dispensers were full. "Always am, Frank. Besides, those drivers tip well when they're happy, and your pancakes make everyone happy." Her voice carried a slight accent that most people couldn't quite place, not quite Southern, not quite Midwestern, but something that suggested she had lived in many places before settling in this remote mountain town. The Copper Kettle occupied a strategic position along Route 89, making it the natural stopping point for travelers heading between Glacier Ridge Military Installation to the north and the larger cities to the south. The building itself was a classic American diner from the 1950s, complete with red vinyl booths that had been reupholstered multiple times, a long counter with chrome stools that spun freely, and walls decorated with vintage Montana memorabilia and photographs of local landmarks. The jukebox in the corner still worked, though it was loaded with country music that reflected the tastes of the local clientele. Cassie moved through her opening duties with the fluid efficiency of someone who had performed these tasks thousands of times. She filled sugar dispensers, wiped down tables, and arranged the daily newspapers that Frank ordered for customers who preferred reading with their coffee. Her movements were precise and economical, suggesting someone who understood the value of conserving energy during long workdays. What wasn't immediately apparent was how her eyes constantly scanned the parking lot visible through the large front windows, or how she unconsciously positioned herself to maintain clear sight lines to all entrances. The first customers began arriving at 6:15, a mix of local ranchers heading out for morning chores, construction workers grabbing breakfast before driving to job sites, and early rising retirees who treated the diner as their informal social club. Cassie knew them all by name, remembered their usual orders, and possessed an uncanny ability to sense when someone needed conversation versus when they preferred to eat in peaceful silence. "Morning, Mr. Patterson," she called out as a grizzled rancher settled into his regular booth near the window. "Coffee and the usual stack with extra butter?" Her genuine smile transformed her face, revealing someone who took real pleasure in small acts of service and human connection. Patterson nodded with appreciation, his weathered hands already reaching for the coffee cup she placed before him with practiced precision. "You're a treasure, Cassie. Don't know how this place ran before you showed up." His comment carried the weight of someone who had been eating at the Copper Kettle long enough to remember several previous waitresses who had come and gone with varying degrees of competence and friendliness. As the morning progressed, Cassie demonstrated the kind of professional excellence that made difficult work appear effortless. She anticipated customer needs, resolved minor conflicts with diplomatic grace, and maintained the kind of cheerful demeanor that brightened everyone's day. When the coffee machine developed a temperamental hiccup, she diagnosed and fixed the problem with technical knowledge that seemed inconsistent with her waitressing background. When a heated discussion about local politics threatened to escalate between two regular customers, she diffused the tension with humor and wisdom that suggested someone who had navigated far more serious conflicts. Deputy Sheriff Rita Morales entered the diner at 7:30 a.m., her uniform crisp, despite having been on duty since midnight, responding to a domestic disturbance call that had required careful negotiation rather than force. At 41, Rita had earned respect throughout the county for her combination of fairness and firmness, though she often remarked that Cassie's coffee was the only thing that made early morning shifts bearable. "The usual, Rita?" Cassie asked, already pouring coffee into a large to-go cup while simultaneously taking an order from another customer and keeping track of plates, ready for pickup in the kitchen. Her ability to multitask with seamless efficiency impressed everyone who witnessed it, though few realized they were observing skills developed through years of training in environments where mistakes carried life or death consequences. "Actually, I've got a few minutes to sit down today," Rita replied, settling onto a counter stool where she could maintain visual contact with her patrol car parked outside. "Been hearing interesting radio chatter from Glacier Ridge. Sounds like they've got some kind of training exercise plan that's bigger than usual. You wouldn't happen to know anything about military operations, would you?" Cassie's response came with the perfect mixture of curiosity and ignorance that characterized someone whose knowledge of military affairs came entirely from television and movies. "Not really, though I imagine it gets pretty busy up there." "Do they ever tell local law enforcement what they're planning? Or do you just have to deal with whatever happens?" Rita's laugh carried the frustration of someone who had learned that civilian authorities were rarely informed about military activities until they became problems requiring local assistance. "They're supposed to coordinate with us, but you know how it is. Military folks tend to think they can handle everything internally until they need our help with traffic control or crowd management." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the trucking convoy that Frank had mentioned earlier. 8 massive 18-wheelers pulling into the parking lot with the synchronized precision of vehicles whose drivers communicated constantly via radio. The lead driver, a veteran named Carlos Martinez, who had been making this route for over a decade, waved to Cassie through the window with the familiarity of someone who considered her a friend rather than just a waitress. "Here comes the breakfast rush," Cassie announced to Frank, her voice carrying anticipation rather than dread. "Hope you've got plenty of bacon ready, because Carlos always orders enough food to feed half his crew." Her knowledge of the regular customers extended beyond simple menu preferences to understanding their personalities, their challenges, and their relationships with each other. The next hour transformed the Copper Kettle into a bustling hub of activity as truck drivers, local workers, and travelers filled every booth and counter stool. Cassie moved through the chaos with balletic grace, taking orders, delivering food, refilling coffee cups, and maintaining conversation with dozens of people simultaneously. Her memory for details was remarkable. She never wrote down orders, never forgot special requests, and never mixed up who had ordered what despite serving complex meals to large groups. What impressed observant customers most was how Cassie seemed to anticipate problems before they developed. When one of the truck drivers appeared increasingly agitated while discussing a difficult delivery schedule, she quietly provided extra coffee and a sympathetic ear that helped him decompress. When a disagreement arose over seating arrangements, she diplomatically rearranged the dining room flow to accommodate everyone's needs. Her problem-solving abilities extended far beyond typical waitressing skills, suggesting someone whose experience included managing much more complex situations under significantly greater pressure. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the diner at 8:45 a.m., her medical examiner's badge providing unofficial priority seating despite the crowded conditions. Elena had driven down from the county seat to investigate what appeared to be suspicious circumstances surrounding a death at a remote cabin, and she needed coffee before tackling what promised to be a challenging day. Her friendship with Cassie had developed over months of regular visits, built on mutual respect for professional competence and genuine personal warmth. "Rough morning?" Cassie asked, delivering Elena's preferred dark roast without being asked, and noting the tension lines around her friend's eyes that suggested the kind of case that kept medical examiners awake at night. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Getting ready to examine a death scene that doesn't make sense," Elena replied, keeping her voice low to avoid disturbing other customers. "Remote location, no obvious cause of death, and some physical evidence that suggests the victim might have been involved in activities that weren't entirely legal. You ever deal with situations where nothing adds up the way it should?" Cassie's response demonstrated the kind of thoughtful intelligence that had earned her respect throughout the community, though her specific insights suggested someone whose understanding of criminal behavior went beyond what most civilians would possess. Sometimes the things that don't make sense are actually the most important clues. People try to hide their real activities behind layers of deception, but the truth usually shows up in details that don't fit the story they're trying to tell. Elena studied Cassie with the analytical gaze of someone trained to notice inconsistencies and hidden meanings. That's a remarkably sophisticated observation for someone whose background is in food service. Have you ever considered a career in law enforcement or forensic investigation? "I like what I do here," Cassie replied with a smile that deflected the question while maintaining friendly conversation. "Besides, this job teaches you plenty about human nature. You'd be surprised how much people reveal about themselves when they think they're just ordering breakfast." The morning rush was winding down when Sheriff Tommy Valdez entered the diner with the heavy stride of someone carrying significant responsibility on a day when everything seemed to be going wrong simultaneously. At 55, Tommy had been elected sheriff 3 times on platforms of common-sense law enforcement and community service, though recent incidents had tested his department's capabilities beyond their normal limits. "Coffee, Sheriff," Cassie called out, already pouring his usual black coffee into a ceramic mug rather than a disposable cup, recognizing that his visit wasn't hurried enough to require takeout service. "Make it a double, Cassie," Tommy replied, settling heavily onto a counter stool and removing his hat to reveal gray hair that seemed to have gotten noticeably grayer over the past few months. "Been dealing with federal agents all morning who seem to think our little county has become some kind of hotbed of criminal activity. Apparently, there's been unusual movement of people and equipment through our area that has attracted attention from agencies whose names they won't even tell me." Cassie maintained perfect composure while delivering Tommy's coffee, though her hands moved with the controlled precision of someone whose training had taught her to manage stress responses. Under pressure. Sounds frustrating. Do these federal agents think local law enforcement should be doing something different, or are they just investigating on their own? That's the problem, Tommy continued, unaware that his casual conversation was providing intelligence that Cassie filed away with professional thoroughness. They're asking questions about specific individuals who might be living in our area under false identities, but they won't tell me who they're looking for or what crimes might have been committed. Makes it pretty hard to provide assistance when you don't know what you're assisting with. The implications of Tommy's information weren't lost on Cassie, though her reaction remained within the bounds of normal civilian curiosity about law enforcement activities. Her questions were intelligent but not too specific, concerned but not alarmed, exactly what would be expected from a responsible community member who wanted to understand potential threats to local safety. Frank emerged from the kitchen carrying fresh baked goods for the display case, his timing suggesting someone who had been listening to the conversation with growing concern. "Sheriff, you think we should be worried about anything specific? I mean, should business owners be taking extra precautions or watching for particular types of problems?" Tommy's reassurance carried the authority of someone whose experience had taught him the difference between genuine threats and bureaucratic overreaction. "I don't think there's any immediate danger to local businesses or residents. These federal investigations usually involve people who are trying very hard not to attract attention, so they're probably more concerned about avoiding contact with local law enforcement than causing problems for ordinary citizens." The irony of Tommy's assessment wasn't lost on Cassie, who continued her work with the same professional efficiency while processing information that had significantly more relevance to her situation than anyone in the diner could possibly realize. Her ability to maintain perfect composure while dealing with potentially life-threatening intelligence demonstrated training that extended far beyond customer service skills. As the morning crowd dispersed and the diner returned to its normal rhythm, Cassie found herself alone with her thoughts for the first time since arriving at work. The federal investigation that Tommy had mentioned could represent routine bureaucratic activity, or it could indicate that the careful identity she had constructed over 3 years was beginning to unravel. Her response would need to be measured and strategic, avoiding both paranoid overreaction and dangerous complacency. The sound of approaching helicopters was still hours away, but the events that would transform Cassie's carefully maintained ordinary life into something extraordinary had already been set in motion by forces beyond her control. For now she continued serving coffee and taking orders, maintaining the facade of a small-town waitress whose biggest concern was making sure customers left satisfied with their dining experience. The mid-morning lull provided time for Cassie to complete inventory tasks and prepare for the lunch rush, though her movements carried subtle changes that reflected heightened awareness of her environment. She checked sightlines to exits, noted the positions of regular customers who might provide cover or complications in emergency situations, and mentally reviewed resources that could be accessed quickly if circumstances required immediate action. Frank's casual observation that Cassie seemed unusually focused wouldn't have surprised anyone who understood that the peaceful routine of the Copper Kettle Diner was about to be disrupted by events that would reveal just how dangerous some secrets could be when the past refused to stay buried. The tranquil rhythm of the Copper Kettle's lunch preparation was shattered at 11:23 a.m. when the first radio transmission crackled through Deputy Sheriff Rita Morales's patrol car, announcing an event that would transform a routine Tuesday into the most significant crisis in Millbrook's recent history. Rita had been enjoying a second cup of Cassie's exceptional coffee when her radio erupted with urgent communications from multiple agencies, each transmission adding layers of complexity to what was rapidly becoming an unprecedented emergency situation. All units, this is Glacier Ridge Command. the authoritative voice announced with the crisp precision that characterized military communications during high-priority operations. We have a confirmed breach of classified materials storage facility. Multiple casualties reported. Federal response teams are being deployed immediately. All civilian law enforcement agencies are requested to establish security perimeters and provide assistance as directed. Rita's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips as she processed information that exceeded anything her rural sheriff's department had been trained to handle. The implications of a security breach at Glacier Ridge. Military installation sent chills through her professional assessment of local capabilities. Classified materials storage suggested weapons, technology, or intelligence that carried national security implications far beyond the scope of county law enforcement resources. Cassie continued wiping down tables with practiced efficiency, though. Her movements had acquired the subtle tension of someone whose professional training recognized the significance of what she was overhearing. Her expression remained appropriately concerned, but not alarmed. Exactly what would be expected from a civilian whose understanding of military emergencies came from news reports rather than direct experience. "Rita, that sounds serious," Cassie observed, her voice carrying the right mixture of curiosity and worry that characterized community members who understood that military problems often became local problems. "Do they usually ask for civilian law enforcement help with base security issues?" Rita's response revealed both her professionalism and her growing anxiety about situations that exceeded her department's normal parameters. "Never military. Installations handle their own security unless something has gone so wrong that they need outside assistance for crowd control or traffic management. A breach of classified materials storage is about as serious as it gets in the military world." The radio continued delivering updates that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of events unfolding at the military installation. Multiple casualties suggested violence rather than simple theft, while references to specialized federal response teams indicated that the stolen materials posed significant threats to public safety. Most concerning was the mention of tracking equipment. That suggested the perpetrators had not simply disappeared, but were actively being pursued through terrain that included civilian areas. Frank emerged from the kitchen carrying a fresh pot of coffee, his expression showing the kind of concern that characterized business owners who understood that military emergencies often disrupted local economic activity. "Rita, should we be thinking about closing early today? I mean, if there's some kind of security situation, maybe it's better to have fewer people out and about." "I don't think we're at that point yet," Rita replied, though her confident tone was undermined by her obvious preparation to leave the diner immediately if circumstances required her return to duty. "The base is 45 miles north of here, so unless these perpetrators are specifically heading in our direction, Millbrook probably isn't at immediate risk." Cassie's question demonstrated the kind of practical intelligence that had earned respect throughout the community, though her specific concerns suggested someone whose understanding of tactical situations exceeded typical civilian knowledge. "What kind of classified materials would criminals be interested in stealing? I mean, are we talking about weapons or information or something else that could be dangerous to regular people?" Rita's admission revealed the limitations of local law enforcement when dealing with federal security issues. "Honestly, I don't know enough about military classifications to understand what we might be dealing with. Could be anything from advanced weapons technology to intelligence documents to experimental equipment. The military doesn't share those details with county sheriffs unless we specifically need to know for public safety reasons." The next radio transmission provided information that transformed the situation from distant concern to immediate relevance. "All civilian law enforcement agencies, be advised that tracking indicates the suspects are moving south along Route 89 corridor. Estimated time of arrival in your operational areas is approximately 2 hours. Suspects are armed and extremely Dangerous. Federal tactical teams are en route to establish interception points. Route 89 ran directly through Millbrook, making the Copper Kettle Diner a potential stopping point for anyone traveling the highway corridor between the military installation and southern destinations. Rita's expression shifted from professional concern to active alarm as she realized that her peaceful county had become part of an active pursuit involving federal tactical teams and dangerous criminals carrying classified military materials. "Frank, I think you should consider closing early," Rita announced, her decision reflecting the kind of cautious leadership that had earned her re-election, despite facing increasingly complex law enforcement challenges. "If armed suspects are traveling this route, it's better to have fewer potential targets and witnesses in public places." Cassie's response carried the practical wisdom of someone who understood both business operations and security considerations. "What about travelers who might need food and fuel? Closing could actually create more problems if people can't get basic services while they're trying to get away from dangerous areas." The debate was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Alana Vasquez, who had returned from her investigation with disturbing news that added another layer of complexity to the developing crisis. Her expression showed the grim satisfaction of someone who had solved a professional puzzle while simultaneously discovering that the solution carried implications far more serious than the original problem. "Rita, I need to talk to you about that death scene I investigated this morning," Elena announced, her voice carrying urgency that suggested discoveries relevant to current events. "What I found wasn't a simple criminal death. The victim appears to have been involved in some kind of intelligence operation, and the circumstances suggest he was killed by people with professional training." Elena's detailed examination of the crime scene had revealed evidence that painted a disturbing picture of coordinated criminal activity with connections to the current military emergency. The victim had been carrying communication equipment far more sophisticated than anything typically associated with civilian criminal enterprises, while physical evidence suggested that his killers possessed combat training and specialized knowledge of interrogation techniques. "Dr. Vasquez, are you suggesting that this morning's death is connected to the security breach at Glacier Ridge?" Rita asked, her question reflecting the kind of logical thinking that characterized effective law enforcement professionals who understood how apparently separate incidents often prove to be related. "I can't prove a connection yet, but the timing is suspicious," Elena replied, producing photographs and documentation that supported her preliminary conclusions. The victim had been dead for approximately 12 hours, which would place his death at around the same time frame as whatever led to this morning's military emergency. More importantly, he was carrying equipment that suggests he was either conducting surveillance or coordinating with other people in the area. Cassie maintained appropriate civilian interest in the unfolding investigation while internally processing information that carried far more significance for her situation than anyone present could realize. The convergence of federal investigations, military security breaches, and sophisticated criminal activity suggested that forces beyond her control were creating circumstances that could expose her carefully maintained identity. The radio provided the next piece of disturbing information that connected all the seemingly separate events into a coherent pattern of coordinated criminal activity. "All units, be advised that preliminary investigation indicates the security breach was an inside operation. At least one military personnel with high-level access assisted in the theft of classified materials. Federal counterintelligence teams are investigating possible additional compromised personnel." Rita's professional assessment of the implications was immediate and sobering. An inside operation means these criminals have detailed knowledge of military security procedures and access to information that could help them avoid capture. It also means they might have identified safe houses or support networks that we don't know about. Frank's suggestion reflected the practical concerns of someone whose business depended on maintaining community safety and confidence. Maybe we should contact other business owners and suggest they consider early closing. If dangerous people are heading this way, it's better for everyone to be prepared rather than caught off guard. Cassie's alternative perspective demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking that impressed everyone who heard it, though her specific insights suggested familiarity with tactical planning that exceeded typical civilian experience. Actually, sudden changes in normal business patterns might attract more attention than maintaining regular operations. Criminals often look for signs that law enforcement has been alerted to their activities. Elena's medical examiner training provided a different analytical framework for assessing the developing situation. From a forensic perspective, the evidence at this morning's crime scene suggests we're dealing with people who understand how to eliminate witnesses and cover their tracks. That level of professionalism indicates either extensive criminal experience or military training. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of multiple vehicles arriving in the diner's parking lot with the coordinated timing that suggested official rather than coincidental arrival. Sheriff Tommy Valdez emerged from the lead vehicle, followed by agents whose unmarked cars and professional bearing identified them as federal law enforcement, despite their civilian clothing. Agent David Park approached the diner with the confident stride of someone accustomed to taking charge of complex situations involving multiple jurisdictions and conflicting priorities. His credentials identified him as FBI, though his specific assignment remained unclear to local personnel who had been excluded from federal planning discussions. His expression carried the focused intensity of someone dealing with national security, threats that exceeded local law enforcement capabilities. Sheriff Valdez, I need to establish a temporary command post with communication capabilities and clear sight lines too. Route 89, Agent Park announced, his tone carrying authority that expected immediate cooperation rather than negotiation. We have credible intelligence that armed suspects carrying classified military materials will be traveling through this area within the next 90 minutes. Tommy's response reflected the kind of cooperative professionalism that characterized effective small-town law enforcement when dealing with federal agencies whose resources far exceeded local capabilities. Agent Park, the Copper Kettle has the best position for monitoring highway traffic, and Frank here has always been willing to help law enforcement when we need assistance. Frank's immediate agreement demonstrated community spirit and civic responsibility, though his practical questions reflected legitimate concerns about potential risks to his business and customers. Agent Park, are we talking about a surveillance operation, or should I be preparing for the possibility of armed confrontation on my property? Agent Park's honest assessment carried the weight of someone who understood that civilian cooperation required accurate information about potential dangers, rather than false reassurances that could prove deadly if circumstances deteriorated. Mr. Donovan, we're hoping for peaceful apprehension, but these suspects have already demonstrated willingness to use lethal force. I can't guarantee that this will remain a surveillance operation. Cassie's practical question addressed immediate operational concerns, while demonstrating the kind of thoughtful intelligence that had impressed federal agents who were accustomed to dealing with civilians, whose understanding of law enforcement procedures came entirely from television shows. Agent Park, what happens to customers who are already here? Should they leave immediately? Or would that create more problems if the suspects arrive while people are trying to evacuate? That's an excellent question, Agent Park replied, his professional respect evident in his willingness to provide detailed explanations rather than dismissive reassurances. Sudden evacuation could alert the suspects that law enforcement is present, which might trigger immediate violence. On the other hand, civilian presence creates additional risks if the situation escalates beyond our control. The tactical discussion that followed revealed the complexity of coordinating federal operations with local resources and civilian safety concerns. Agent Park's team needed clear visibility of Route 89 approaches, secure communication with pursuit teams, and the capability to either apprehend suspects peacefully or respond to armed resistance with overwhelming force. The Copper Kettle's location provided operational advantages, but the presence of innocent civilians created complications that required careful planning. Rita's suggestion reflected both law enforcement experience and community knowledge that proved valuable to federal agents who lacked familiarity with local geography and social dynamics. Agent Park, we could establish a civilian evacuation route through the kitchen exit that leads to the parking area behind the building. That would provide escape options without visible movement that might alert approaching suspects. Elena's medical perspective added another dimension to emergency planning that federal agents appreciated despite their primary focus on apprehension rather than casualty treatment. I can establish a medical triage area in the storage room if you expect the possibility of injuries. My equipment is limited, but I can provide emergency treatment until proper medical evacuation arrives. Agent Park's acknowledgement of local expertise demonstrated the kind of professional flexibility that characterized successful federal operations in rural areas, where local knowledge proved invaluable for mission success. I appreciate all offers of assistance. This operation depends on coordination between federal tactical capabilities and local community support. Cassie's question about communication protocols addressed operational security concerns while revealing familiarity with law enforcement procedures that impressed federal agents accustomed to civilian confusion about basic tactical concepts. Agent Park, how will you coordinate with customers who might need to contact family members? Cell phone usage could interfere with your communications or accidentally alert the suspects to law enforcement presence. Another excellent consideration. Agent Park acknowledged his growing respect for local intelligence, evident in his willingness to incorporate civilian suggestions into federal planning. We'll establish controlled communication protocols that maintain operational security while allowing necessary personal contact. The federal command post that emerged in the Copper Kettle's dining room transformed the peaceful restaurant into a sophisticated law enforcement operation center equipped with communication gear, surveillance equipment, and tactical resources that exceeded anything local agencies possessed. Agent Park's team worked with quiet efficiency to establish systems that would provide real-time intelligence while maintaining the diner's normal appearance to avoid alerting approaching suspects. Cassie continued her waitressing duties with the same professional competence that had characterized her work throughout the morning, though her movements now carried subtle adjustments that reflected awareness of federal surveillance equipment and tactical positioning requirements. Her ability to maintain normal operations while accommodating complex law enforcement needs impressed agents who were accustomed to civilian panic and confusion during high-stakes operations. The radio chatter that filled the diner provided constant updates on pursuit activities that were gradually converging on Millbrook as multiple federal teams attempted to establish interception points along routes that suspects might use to escape with their stolen classified materials. Each transmission added details to a picture of coordinated criminal activity that involved sophisticated planning, extensive resources, and professional expertise that suggested connections to organized crime or foreign intelligence operations. Agent Park's briefing revealed the scope of the security breach and the significance of the materials that had been stolen from Glacier Ridge military installation. Advanced encryption technology, experimental weapon systems, and intelligence. Documents had been removed by people who possessed detailed knowledge of storage locations, security procedures, and transportation routes. The theft represented a national security disaster with implications that extended far beyond local law enforcement capabilities. "Ladies and gentlemen," Agent Park announced to the assembled local personnel, "we're dealing with people who have demonstrated exceptional planning capabilities and willingness to eliminate witnesses. The classified materials they've stolen could be sold to foreign, governments or terrorist organizations for amounts that would fund extensive criminal operations. Apprehending these suspects is a matter of national security. The weight of Agent Park's assessment settled over the diner like a heavy blanket, transforming what had been a routine Tuesday into participation in events that would be remembered throughout the community for years to come. Everyone present understood that they had been thrust into circumstances that exceeded normal experience and would require courage, cooperation, and careful execution to resolve successfully. Cassie's final question of the briefing addressed the practical timeline that would determine how long the diner would serve as a federal command post and when normal operations might resume. Agent Park, based on your intelligence, how long do you expect this operation to continue? I'm asking because some of our regular customers will be expecting lunch service, and we need to know how to handle normal business during extraordinary circumstances. Agent Park's response carried the honesty of someone who understood that civilian cooperation required realistic expectations rather than false optimism about quick resolutions to complex criminal investigations. Ms. Brennan, based on current intelligence, we expect suspect arrival within the next hour. The actual apprehension operation could take anywhere from minutes to several hours, depending on suspect cooperation and tactical developments. I recommend planning for extended operations, while hoping for quick resolution. The federal operation that was transforming the Copper Kettle into a tactical command center represented only the beginning of events that would test everyone's capabilities and reveal secrets that had been carefully hidden for years. As Agent Park's team completed their preparations and surveillance equipment began monitoring Route 89 approaches, the peaceful Montana diner became the center of a national security operation that would challenge assumptions about ordinary people and extraordinary circumstances. The surveillance equipment that Agent Park's team had installed throughout the Copper Kettle hummed with electronic efficiency as federal communications specialists monitored multiple frequencies for signs of approaching suspects. The diner's transformation into a tactical command center was nearly complete when the first confirmation arrived that changed the operation from preventive surveillance to active engagement. At 12:47 p.m., a reconnaissance team positioned 15 miles north reported visual contact with a black SUV matching suspect vehicle descriptions, traveling south at high speed. Command, this is Overwatch 7, the radio crackled with urgent precision. Target vehicle confirmed on Route 89, proceeding toward your location at approximately 80 miles per hour. 2 occupants visible, driver and passenger both appearing. To scan for surveillance. Vehicle modifications suggest armored plating and communications equipment. Estimate arrival at your position in 12 minutes. Agent Park's immediate response demonstrated the kind of tactical leadership that had earned him assignment to high-priority national security operations. All units, confirm readiness status. Surveillance teams maintain concealment. Apprehension teams prepare for coordinated response. Remember, these suspects are armed and have demonstrated willingness to kill witnesses. Cassie continued serving coffee to the remaining customers with professional calm that impressed federal agents who were accustomed to civilian panic during high-stakes operations. Her movements appeared routine and relaxed, though trained observers might have noticed how she unconsciously positioned herself to maintain clear sight lines to all entrances and exits. The subtle tension in her shoulders suggested someone whose experience had taught her to prepare for violence while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. Dr. Elena Vasquez had remained at the diner to provide medical support if the operation resulted in casualties, her emergency medical kit discreetly positioned near the kitchen entrance, where it could be accessed quickly without interfering with tactical operations. Her professional calm provided reassurance to civilian personnel who were struggling to process their involvement in events that exceeded anything they had imagined possible in their quiet mountain community. Agent Park, Elena observed quietly. The radio transmissions suggest These suspects are traveling faster than would be normal for people trying to avoid attention. That could indicate they're aware of pursuit and are attempting to reach a specific destination before law enforcement can establish effective roadblocks. Agent Park's acknowledgement of Elena's assessment revealed both professional respect for intelligent analysis and growing concern about suspects whose behavior suggested sophisticated understanding of law enforcement tactics. Dr. Vasquez, your observation is consistent with our intelligence profile. These people have military training and detailed knowledge of federal response procedures. They're not running randomly. They're executing a planned escape route. The tension that filled the diner was interrupted by Frank's practical observation about operational logistics that federal agents had overlooked in their focus on tactical preparations. Agent Park, what happens if regular customers arrive? While this operation is in progress, I've got lunch regulars who show up every Tuesday around 1 o'clock, and they're going to notice if the parking lot is full of federal agents. Mr. Donovan, we've positioned agents to intercept and redirect civilian traffic before it reaches your establishment. Agent Park replied, though his expression suggested concern about variables that could compromise operational security. However, if locals arrive unexpectedly, we need everyone to maintain normal behavior while subtly discouraging them from staying. Cassie's question addressed tactical considerations that impressed federal agents with its sophistication while maintaining the appropriate tone of civilian concern about community safety. Agent Park, have you considered that these suspects might recognize signs of law enforcement presence and choose to bypass Millbrook entirely? Their route could take them through town without stopping, which would eliminate the opportunity for apprehension, but also reduce risks to local residents. Ms. Brennan, that's a possibility we're prepared for. Agent Park acknowledged his growing respect for local intelligence evident in his willingness to provide detailed explanations rather than dismissive reassurances. However, our analysis suggests they'll need to stop for fuel, food, or communication within the next 50 miles. The Copper Kettle represents their best option for services that appear normal to casual observation. The radio provided the next update that transformed speculation into immediate reality as surveillance teams reported that the suspect vehicle was maintaining course directly toward Millbrook rather than taking alternate routes that would avoid the town entirely. Command, target vehicle continuing south on Route 89. No deviation from direct course. Estimated arrival in 7 minutes. Repeat, suspects appear committed to transit through your operational area. Sheriff Tommy Valdez positioned himself near the front windows where he could observe approaching traffic while maintaining the appearance of casual conversation with local business owners. His decades of law enforcement experience had taught him to recognize dangerous situations before they fully developed, though the current circumstances exceeded anything he had encountered during his career in rural Montana. Agent Park, I've been thinking about what happens after you apprehend these suspects, Tommy said, his practical concerns reflecting the kind of long-term thinking that characterized effective small-town leadership. If classified military materials are involved, how long will federal agents need to remain in Millbrook for investigation and evidence processing? Agent Park's honest response revealed both the complexity of federal operations and the realistic timeline for returning the community to normal conditions. Sheriff Valdez, depending on what we recover and what the suspects reveal during interrogation, federal presence could continue for several days. We'll need to secure evidence, interview witnesses, and coordinate with military investigators who will want to examine everything related to the security breach. Rita Morales had positioned herself at the counter where her patrol car was visible through the window, ready to provide immediate backup if the federal operation required local law enforcement assistance. Her radio monitored both federal frequencies and county communications, ensuring coordination between multiple agencies whose normal operations rarely intersected. Agent Park, what's the protocol if these suspects resist apprehension? Rita asked, her question reflecting professional responsibility for community safety during operations that could result in armed confrontation. I need to know whether my department should prepare for casualty evacuation, crowd control, or pursuit operations if the situation escalates beyond federal capabilities. Deputy Morales, we're hoping for peaceful surrender, but these suspects have already killed at least one person and stolen materials that represent significant national security threats. Agent Park replied, his tactical assessment providing realistic expectations rather than false optimism. If they resist, we're prepared to use necessary force to prevent their escape with classified materials. The federal agents positioned throughout the diner maintained professional readiness while attempting to preserve the establishment's normal appearance to avoid alerting approaching suspects to law enforcement presence. Their communication equipment provided constant updates on suspect location and behavior, while surveillance cameras offered real-time visual confirmation of approaching vehicles. Cassie moved between tables with the fluid efficiency that characterized her work throughout the morning, though her interactions with customers now carried additional layers of meaning as she subtly assessed their positions relative to potential lines of fire and escape routes. Her professional competence impressed federal agents who were accustomed to civilian confusion and panic during high-stakes operations. Ms. Brennan, you're remarkably calm considering the circumstances, Agent Park observed during a brief conversation while his team completed final preparations. Most civilians would be significantly more anxious about potential armed confrontation in their workplace. Cassie's response maintained appropriate civilian perspective, while revealing the kind of thoughtful courage that earned respect from law enforcement professionals who understood the difference between reckless bravado and genuine composure. Under pressure. Agent Park, I figure the best way to help is to do my job normally and let you do yours. Panic doesn't improve anyone's performance during dangerous situations. The radio transmission that announced immediate suspect arrival transformed the diner from tense preparation to active operation, as surveillance teams provided real-time updates on vehicle approach and occupant behavior. Command, target vehicle now visible from your position. 2 occupants maintaining constant communication via radio equipment. Vehicle speed reduced to normal traffic patterns. Suspects appear to be conducting visual surveillance of your location. Agent Park's immediate command demonstrated tactical leadership as the operation shifted from preparation to execution. All units maintain positions. Surveillance teams continue observation. Apprehension teams prepare for coordinated response on my signal. Remember, civilian safety is our primary concern. The black SUV that pulled into the Copper Kettle's parking lot carried 2 occupants whose professional bearing and tactical awareness immediately identified them as the subjects of federal pursuit. The driver's systematic visual scan of the area revealed training and surveillance detection, while the passenger's obvious communication equipment suggested coordination with additional personnel who might be positioned elsewhere. Cassie approached the front window with a coffee pot in hand, maintaining the normal routine of a waitress checking on the parking lot while providing federal agents with civilian cover for their surveillance activities. Her movements appeared casual and routine, though trained observers might have noticed how her positioning provided optimal observation angles without exposing her to direct lines of fire from the suspect vehicle. Agent Park, they're not moving to enter the diner, Cassie observed quietly, her assessment demonstrating tactical awareness that impressed federal agents who were accustomed to civilian confusion about basic surveillance concepts. The driver is conducting counter-surveillance while the passenger appears to be coordinating with someone via radio. This looks like a planned meeting rather than a routine stop for services. Agent Park's acknowledgement of Cassie's analysis revealed professional respect for intelligent observation that proved valuable during tactical operations. Ms. Brennan, your assessment matches our surveillance team reports. These suspects are definitely conducting planned coordination rather than random travel. The suspect's behavior confirmed federal intelligence about sophisticated criminal organization with detailed operational planning and extensive communication capabilities. Their systematic approach to surveillance detection suggested military training and familiarity with law enforcement tactics, while their coordination activities indicated connections to additional personnel who might be positioned throughout the area. Dr. Elena Vasquez moved to a position where she could observe the suspect vehicle while maintaining medical readiness if the operation resulted in casualties. Her forensic training provided analytical frameworks for assessing criminal behavior that complemented federal tactical assessment capabilities. Agent Park, from a behavioral analysis perspective, these suspects are demonstrating confidence that suggests they believe they have advantages that law enforcement doesn't know about. Elena observed, her professional assessment adding psychological dimensions to tactical planning. That level of confidence could indicate additional support, planned escape routes, or capabilities that exceed your current intelligence. The radio chatter from federal surveillance teams provided constant updates on suspect activities while maintaining operational security through coded communications that civilian personnel couldn't interpret. The systematic nature of suspect behavior suggested planned coordination that exceeded simple criminal activity and approached the sophistication of military or intelligence operations. Frank positioned himself behind the counter where he could observe both the suspect vehicle and federal agent activities without appearing to conduct surveillance himself. His decades of experience serving travelers had taught him to recognize unusual behavior patterns, though the current situation exceeded anything he had encountered during his ownership of the Copper Kettle. Agent Park, I've been watching travelers for 20 years, and these people aren't behaving like anyone who's just stopping for food or fuel, Frank observed, his practical assessment providing civilian perspective on suspicious behavior. They're treating this like a business meeting rather than a rest stop. The suspect's continued presence in the parking lot without entering the diner created tactical complications for federal agents whose apprehension plans had assumed normal customer behavior. Their obvious communication activities suggested coordination with additional personnel who might be approaching the area, while their surveillance detection efforts indicated awareness of law enforcement presence. Agent Park's tactical assessment revealed growing concern about suspects whose behavior suggested capabilities that exceeded initial intelligence estimates. All units maintain positions but prepare for possibility of additional suspect personnel. Current subjects are demonstrating professional surveillance, awareness that indicates extensive training and possible backup support. Sheriff Tommy Valdez approached Agent Park with practical concerns about local law enforcement capabilities. If the situation escalated beyond federal resources, Agent Park, if these suspects have backup approaching our area, my department doesn't have the equipment or training to handle coordinated resistance from people with military capabilities. We need to know what kind of support you can provide if this becomes a county-wide operation. Sheriff Valdez, additional federal tactical teams are en route with estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Agent Park replied, his honest assessment providing realistic expectations about available resources. Until then, we're operating with current personnel and hoping that suspect behavior doesn't exceed our immediate capabilities. The tension that filled the diner reached new levels as everyone present understood that they were witnessing the development of a situation that could escalate from surveillance to armed confrontation with minimal warning. Federal agents maintained professional readiness while local personnel prepared to provide whatever assistance might be required during circumstances that exceeded normal law enforcement operations. Cassie continued her normal waitressing activities while processing tactical information that carried far more significance for her personal situation than anyone present could realize. The convergence of federal investigations, sophisticated criminal activity, And potential armed confrontation was creating exactly the kind of circumstances that could expose her carefully maintained civilian identity. The radio transmission. That changed everything arrived at 1:03 p.m. with information that transformed the tactical situation from manageable complexity to immediate crisis. Command, we have additional vehicles approaching your location from multiple directions. Count. 3 separate vehicles, all appearing to conduct coordinated movement. This is not a simple apprehension operation. Repeat, you are facing coordinated resistance from multiple armed subjects. Agent Park's immediate response demonstrated tactical leadership during rapidly deteriorating circumstances that exceeded initial planning assumptions. All units, prepare for coordinated resistance. Additional federal support is 30 minutes out. We need to contain the situation until backup arrives. The realization that federal agents were facing a coordinated operation involving multiple armed subjects rather than simple criminal apprehension created immediate urgency about civilian safety and operational capabilities. Agent Park's team had prepared for apprehending 2 suspects, not engaging multiple coordinated adversaries who possessed military training and sophisticated equipment. Agent Park, we need to consider civilian evacuation, Rita suggested her. Practical assessment reflecting law enforcement responsibility for community safety during operations that were escalating beyond control. If we're facing multiple armed subjects with military training, keeping civilians in the area creates unnecessary risks. Deputy Morales, evacuation might alert approaching subjects to law enforcement presence and trigger immediate armed resistance. Agent Park replied, his tactical dilemma revealing the complexity of operations that balanced civilian safety against operational security. We need to maintain current positions while preparing for coordinated response. Cassie's assessment of the deteriorating situation addressed tactical considerations that impressed federal agents with its sophistication while maintaining appropriate civilian concern about community safety. Agent Park, if multiple vehicles are approaching in coordination, they might be planning to use the Copper Kettle as a meeting point or command center. That would put everyone here at immediate risk, regardless of whether you maintain surveillance or attempt apprehension. The accuracy of Cassie's tactical assessment became apparent as surveillance teams reported that approaching vehicles were demonstrating movement patterns consistent with coordinated military operations rather than random criminal activity. Federal agents found themselves facing an operation that exceeded their immediate capabilities and threatened to overwhelm local law enforcement resources. Agent Park's growing respect for Cassie's analytical capabilities was evident in his willingness to consider civilian input during tactical planning that normally excluded non-law enforcement personnel. Ms. Brennan, your assessment matches our surveillance intelligence. We're dealing with people who have extensive tactical training and detailed operational planning. The sound of approaching vehicles became audible to everyone in the diner as multiple subjects coordinated their arrival at the Copper Kettle in a demonstration of tactical sophistication that confirmed federal intelligence about professional criminal organization with military capabilities. The peaceful mountain diner had become the center of a national security operation that threatened to exceed available resources. Agent Park, Cassie said quietly, her voice carrying calm certainty that contrasted sharply with the growing tension surrounding them. I think I can help with this situation. The immediate reaction was predictable and devastating. Agent Park's laugh carried the kind of professional dismissal that federal agents reserved for civilians who clearly didn't understand the complexity of tactical operations involving armed resistance from subjects with military training. His response was joined by similar reactions from other federal personnel who found the suggestion both touching and completely unrealistic. Ms. Brennan, I appreciate your willingness to help, but we're dealing with armed subjects who have demonstrated military-level tactical capabilities, Agent Park explained with patient condescension. This requires specialized training and equipment that civilian personnel simply don't possess. The best way you can help is to remain calm and follow our instructions if the situation requires emergency procedures. Sheriff Tommy Valdez's reaction was equally dismissive, though tempered by personal respect for Cassie's character and community contributions. "Cassie, you're a wonderful person and an excellent waitress, but federal tactical operations require years of specialized training. These agents are professionals who know how to handle dangerous situations that exceed civilian capabilities." Dr. Elena Vasquez's medical training provided a different perspective on civilian involvement in dangerous situations, though her conclusion was identical to law enforcement assessments. "Cassie, the medical risks alone would make civilian participation in armed confrontation completely inappropriate. Federal agents have protective equipment and tactical medical support that aren't available to civilian personnel." Rita Morales's response reflected both professional law enforcement assessment and personal concern for community members who might not understand the lethal realities of tactical operations. "Cassie, I know you want to help, but law enforcement operations involving armed resistance require specific training that takes years to develop. The best thing civilians can do is stay safe and let professionals handle dangerous situations." Frank's reaction combined business owner pragmatism with genuine concern for employee safety during circumstances that exceeded anything anticipated when he had agreed to allow federal agents to use his establishment as a command center. "Cassie, honey, these federal agents know what they're doing. Our job is to stay out of their way and let them handle whatever's about to happen." The collective dismissal of Cassie's offer created exactly the kind of professional isolation that she had experienced throughout her career when civilian appearance masked capabilities that exceeded anything documented in official records. Irony of being rejected by federal agents who were using tactical procedures she had helped develop during classified operations wasn't lost on her, though her response remained within the bounds of appropriate civilian behavior. "I understand your concerns," Cassie replied with calm dignity that impressed everyone present, despite their continued belief that her offer represented well-intentioned but unrealistic civilian enthusiasm. "I just thought there might be something I could contribute based on some experience I've had with difficult situations." Agent Park's final response demonstrated the kind of professional courtesy that federal agents were trained to provide to civilian personnel, whose cooperation was essential for successful operations, even when their suggestions exceeded their actual capabilities. "Ms. Brennan, your willingness to help is commendable, but federal tactical operations require specialized training and equipment. The most valuable contribution you can make is helping us maintain operational security while we coordinate with additional federal resources." The approaching sound of multiple vehicles conducting coordinated movement toward the Copper Kettle created immediate urgency about tactical response capabilities as federal agents realized they were facing an operation that exceeded their immediate resources. Agent Park's team had been prepared to apprehend 2 suspects, not engage multiple coordinated adversaries who possessed military training and sophisticated operational planning. Cassie returned to her position behind the counter with the same professional composure that had characterized her work throughout the crisis, though her movements now carried subtle preparations that reflected tactical awareness extending far beyond anything suggested by her civilian employment history. The dismissal of her capabilities had been complete and predictable, but the developing situation would soon require exactly the kind of expertise that everyone present had just rejected as impossible. The coordinated arrival of 3 additional vehicles at the Copper Kettle transformed Agent Park's manageable apprehension operation into a tactical nightmare that exceeded federal resources and threatened to overwhelm local law enforcement capabilities entirely. The lead vehicle disgorged 4 armed individuals who moved with military precision toward strategic positions around the diner, while the second vehicle remained stationary with its engine running in a configuration that suggested either command, coordination, or rapid escape preparation. The third vehicle had positioned itself to block the primary escape route along Route 89, effectively trapping everyone inside the diner within a tactical perimeter controlled by subjects whose capabilities remained unknown. Agent Park's immediate assessment of the deteriorating situation revealed professional alarm as he realized his team was facing a coordinated operation that exceeded every planning assumption about criminal capabilities and tactical sophistication. All units, we have multiple armed subjects establishing perimeter control around our position. Request immediate backup from all available federal tactical teams. This is no longer a simple apprehension operation. The radio response from Federal Command provided information that confirmed Agent Park's worst fears about the scope of criminal organization they were confronting. Agent Park, additional federal resources are minimum 25 minutes from your location. Military tactical support is being coordinated but will require authorization through Pentagon command structure. You are authorized to take whatever measures necessary to protect civilian personnel and prevent suspect escape with classified materials. Cassie continued wiping down tables with mechanical precision while processing tactical information that carried far more significance for her personal situation than anyone present could possibly realize. The systematic deployment of armed personnel around the diner demonstrated exactly the kind of professional operational planning that suggested connections to organized crime, foreign intelligence services, or rogue military units whose capabilities could exceed federal law enforcement resources. Dr. Elena Vasquez positioned herself near her medical equipment while maintaining visual contact with federal agents, whose tactical preparations were becoming increasingly urgent as they processed intelligence about the coordinated threat they were facing. Her forensic training provided analytical frameworks for assessing criminal behavior, though the current situation exceeded anything she had encountered during her medical examiner career. Agent Park, from a behavioral analysis perspective, this level of coordination suggests extensive planning and detailed intelligence about federal response capabilities. Elena observed, her professional assessment adding psychological dimensions to tactical planning that was rapidly becoming inadequate for current circumstances. These people knew exactly when and where to establish tactical advantage over law enforcement personnel. Sheriff Tommy Valdez moved to a position where he could coordinate with his deputy while maintaining communication with federal agents, whose tactical situation was deteriorating with every passing minute. His decades of law enforcement experience had taught him to recognize when situations exceeded available resources, though the current circumstances represented threats that surpassed anything he had imagined possible in rural Montana. Agent Park, my department has limited tactical capabilities for dealing with coordinated resistance from multiple armed subjects, Tommy admitted, his honest assessment reflecting practical limitations rather than professional inadequacy. We can provide perimeter support and civilian evacuation assistance, but engaging military-trained adversaries exceeds our equipment and training capabilities. Rita Morales maintained radio contact with county dispatch while monitoring federal communications that revealed growing concern about operational capabilities and civilian safety during a tactical situation that was escalating beyond available resources. Her position near the front windows provided observation of suspect activities while maintaining communication links that could prove essential if circumstances required coordinated emergency response. Agent Park, County Dispatch reports that additional suspicious vehicles have been observed on secondary roads throughout our area, Rita announced, her information adding another layer of complexity to an already overwhelming tactical situation. This appears to be a coordinated operation involving more personnel than we initially detected. Frank positioned himself behind the coffee counter where he could observe both federal agent activities and suspect movements without appearing to conduct surveillance himself. His decades of experience serving travelers had taught him to recognize dangerous situations before they fully developed, though the current circumstances exceeded anything he had encountered during his ownership of the Copper Kettle. "Agent Park, these people aren't behaving like criminals who are trying to escape," Frank observed, his practical assessment providing civilian perspective on tactical behavior that complemented federal analysis. "They're acting like military personnel who are executing a planned operation with specific objectives." The tactical radio communications that filled the diner provided constant updates on suspect activities while revealing federal concern about operational capabilities and resource limitations during a coordinated operation that threatened to exceed law enforcement authority. Agent Park's team had been prepared for routine apprehension, not tactical engagement with subjects whose capabilities rivaled federal tactical teams. Agent Park's growing realization that his team was facing an operation that exceeded their immediate capabilities became evident in his tactical communications and resource requests that revealed professional alarm about circumstances that could result in federal casualties and mission failure. "Command, request immediate authorization for military tactical support. We are facing coordinated resistance that exceeds civilian law enforcement capabilities." The radio response from Federal Command provided both authorization for enhanced tactical measures and realistic assessment of available resources during operations that had escalated beyond routine criminal apprehension. "Agent Park, military tactical teams are being deployed, but will require 45 minutes minimum for arrival and operational readiness. You are authorized to coordinate with local military installations for immediate support if circumstances warrant." Cassie's movement toward the Federal Command equipment appeared to be routine waitress activity as she refilled coffee cups and maintained normal diner operations, though her positioning provided optimal access to communication systems and tactical displays that revealed detailed intelligence about suspect capabilities and federal resource limitations. Her professional composure impressed federal agents who were accustomed to civilian panic during high-stakes operations. "Agent Park, I need to access your communication system," Cassie announced quietly, her voice carrying authority that hadn't been present during her earlier civilian interactions. "There are tactical options available that your current intelligence doesn't include." Agent Park's immediate response reflected both professional dismissal and growing frustration with civilian interference during a tactical crisis that demanded immediate federal attention and specialized law enforcement capabilities. "Ms. Brennan, this is federal law enforcement equipment that requires security clearance and operational training. Civilian personnel cannot access tactical communication systems during active operations." "Agent Park," Cassie replied with calm certainty that contrasted sharply with the growing tension surrounding the federal tactical team. "I need you to run a background verification on Cassandra Brennan through Pentagon Special Operations Command. Request clearance confirmation for Operation Nightfall authorization." The specific reference to Pentagon Special Operations Command and classified operation designations created immediate silence among federal agents whose training had taught them to recognize when civilian personnel possessed knowledge that exceeded their apparent backgrounds. Agent Park's expression shifted from dismissive frustration to professional curiosity as he processed terminology that suggested military connections far beyond anything suggested by Cassie's employment history. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at Cassie with the expression of someone whose understanding of reality had been fundamentally challenged by information that didn't align with 3 years of friendship and casual conversation. "Cassie, what are you talking about?" "Pentagon Special Operations Command, you're a waitress at a Montana diner." Sheriff Tommy Valdez approached the federal communication equipment with growing concern about revelations that suggested his quiet community had been harboring someone whose background involved classified military operations and national security clearances. "Agent Park, Are you seriously considering running a background check based on a waitress claiming to have Pentagon connections? Rita Morales positioned herself where she could observe both Cassie's demeanor and Agent Park's response to claims. That seemed impossible given 3 years of community interaction with someone whose background appeared completely civilian. Agent Park, I've known Cassie for 3 years. She's never mentioned any military experience, let alone special operations. Background. Frank's reaction combined personal confusion with business owner concern about revelations that suggested his employee might possess background information that exceeded anything she had disclosed during her employment application process. Cassie. Honey, what in the world are you talking about? You applied for a waitressing job 3 years ago with experience in food service and customer relations. Agent Park's professional training had taught him to investigate unusual claims during tactical operations, especially when those claims involved classified military operations and specialized command structures that civilian personnel shouldn't possess knowledge about. His decision to pursue verification reflected both tactical necessity and growing curiosity about information that could prove relevant to current operations. Command, this is Agent Park requesting immediate background verification for civilian Cassandra Brennan, currently employed at location of tactical operation, he announced into his secure communication system. Subject claims Pentagon Special Operations clearance and references Operation Nightfall authorization. Request priority verification through military intelligence channels. The response from Federal Command revealed both surprise and immediate action as intelligence analysts processed a verification request that involved classified military operations and specialized clearance levels that exceeded normal civilian access. Agent Park, your verification request is being processed through Pentagon Special Operations Command. Stand by for priority response. Cassie moved to the Federal communication equipment with fluid confidence that suggested familiarity with tactical systems far beyond anything indicated by her civilian employment history. Her positioning and technical knowledge impressed Federal agents who were trained to recognize when civilian personnel possessed capabilities that exceeded their apparent backgrounds. Agent Park, while we're waiting for verification, I can provide tactical assessment of current threat deployment that might prove useful for coordinating response with incoming Federal backup, Cassie offered, her voice carrying professional authority that contrasted sharply with her previous civilian demeanor. The suspect positioning suggests classical military perimeter establishment with specific vulnerabilities that can be exploited. Agent Park's tactical situation had deteriorated to the point where any additional intelligence could prove valuable for maintaining Federal operational capability until backup resources arrived. His willingness to consider civilian input reflected desperation rather than confidence, though Cassie's technical knowledge was beginning to suggest capabilities that exceeded normal civilian experience. Ms. Brennan, what kind of tactical assessment can you provide about suspect positioning and operational capabilities? Agent Park asked, his question reflecting both professional skepticism and growing recognition that current circumstances required consideration of all available resources. Cassie's analysis of suspect tactical deployment demonstrated knowledge of military operational procedures that impressed Federal agents whose training had taught them to recognize professional expertise regardless of its source. Agent Park, the suspect perimeter establishment follows classical military doctrine for controlling territory while maintaining rapid escape options. Their positioning suggests coordinated training and detailed operational planning. Dr. Alina Vasquez listened to Cassie's tactical analysis with growing amazement as her friend demonstrated knowledge of military procedures and operational planning that seemed completely inconsistent with 3 years of casual conversation about waitressing challenges and community events. Cassie, how do you know about military tactical procedures? This is completely different from anything you've ever mentioned about your background. The radio transmission that interrupted their conversation provided verification that transformed everything about how everyone present understood Cassie's identity and capabilities. Agent Park, verification complete for subject Cassandra Brennan. Pentagon Special Operations Command confirms active clearance for Colonel Cassandra Brennan. Designated call sign Viper 6, authorized for tactical command of federal operations involving classified materials recovery. The silence that followed the verification was complete and profound as every person in the diner processed information that fundamentally challenged their understanding of reality and transformed their perception of someone they had known. For years, Agent Park's expression showed the particular shock of a federal agent discovering that operational authority exceeded his own command level, while local personnel struggled to reconcile 3 years of civilian interaction with military rank that commanded immediate respect. Sheriff Tommy Valdez stared at Cassie with the expression of someone whose professional world had been completely overturned by revelations that challenged every assumption about community members and background verification procedures. Colonel Brennan, you've been living in our community for 3 years as a waitress, and you're actually a military colonel with special operations clearance. Rita Morales approached Cassie with the careful respect that civilian law enforcement personnel were trained to provide to military officers whose rank exceeded local authority structures. Colonel Brennan, why have you been working as a waitress in Millbrook? Are you on some kind of undercover assignment that involves our community? Frank's reaction combined personal confusion with business owner amazement as he processed the realization that his employee possessed military rank and operational authority that exceeded anything he had imagined possible. Colonel Brennan, ma'am, I don't understand what's happening here. You've been serving coffee and taking orders for 3 years. How is this possible? Dr. Elena Vasquez studied Cassie with analytical intensity as she attempted to reconcile 3 years of friendship with revelations about military background and classified operations that suggested capabilities far beyond anything indicated through casual conversation. Cassie, Colonel Brennan, whoever you are, why have you been hiding this? What kind of operation requires a special operations colonel to work undercover as a small-town waitress? Cassie removed her apron with deliberate movements that transformed her entire demeanor from civilian service worker to military officer whose bearing commanded immediate authority and respect from everyone present. Her posture straightened, her voice carried command presence, and her eyes reflected analytical capabilities that had been carefully concealed behind 3 years of practiced civilian behavior. Agent Park, I need immediate tactical command of this operation, Colonel Cassandra Brennan announced, her voice carrying authority that federal agents were trained to recognize and obey, regardless of personal confusion about circumstances. The suspects you're facing are part of a classified operation that I've been investigating for 18 months. They're not simple criminals. They're rogue intelligence operatives with connections to foreign governments. Agent Park's immediate compliance with superior authority demonstrated federal training that emphasized operational command, structure regardless of personal surprise about circumstances that exceeded normal experience. Colonel Brennan, Federal. Tactical resources are at your disposal. What are your orders for current operational requirements? Colonel Brennan moved to the federal communication equipment with professional confidence that revealed expertise with tactical systems far beyond anything suggested by her previous civilian interactions. Her technical knowledge impressed federal agents who recognized when superior officers possessed capabilities that exceeded their own training and experience. Command, this is Colonel Cassandra Brennan, Viper 6, assuming tactical command of current operation, she announced into the secure communication system with authority that immediately transformed federal response procedures. Current suspects are confirmed rogue operatives carrying classified materials related to Operation Nightfall. Request immediate coordination with Pentagon Special Operations Command for enhanced tactical response. The radio response from Federal Command revealed both recognition of Colonel Brennan's authority and immediate mobilization of resources that exceeded normal law enforcement capabilities. Colonel Brennan, Pentagon Special Operations Command, confirms your operational authority. Enhanced tactical teams are being deployed with estimated arrival in 15 minutes. What are your immediate operational requirements? Colonel Brennan's tactical assessment of current circumstances demonstrated strategic thinking that impressed federal agents, whose training had taught them to recognize superior planning capabilities and operational expertise. Command, current suspect positioning suggests coordinated escape operation rather than tactical engagement. They're attempting to extract classified materials while minimizing federal response. I recommend immediate perimeter expansion to prevent escape while preparing for coordinated apprehension. Sheriff Tommy Valdez approached Colonel Brennan with the respect that civilian law enforcement personnel were trained to provide to military officers, whose authority exceeded local command structures. Colonel Brennan, what can local law enforcement provide to support your tactical operation? We want to assist but need to understand our role in military operations. Sheriff Valdez, I need your department to establish outer perimeter control to prevent suspect escape through secondary routes. Colonel Brennan replied, her tactical planning incorporating local resources into comprehensive operational strategy. These suspects have detailed knowledge of local geography and will attempt to use civilian evacuation routes if they perceive federal tactical advantage. Rita Morales positioned herself to receive operational orders from superior military authority while maintaining coordination with county, dispatch and emergency services that might be required during tactical operations that could result in casualties or collateral damage. Colonel Brennan, what are our communication protocols for coordinating with military tactical teams when they arrive? Dr. Elena Vasquez prepared her medical equipment for potential casualties while processing the transformation of her friend into a military officer whose operational responsibilities involved national security, threats and classified materials. Recovery. Colonel Brennan, do you anticipate medical casualties during tactical operations? Should I prepare for specific types of injuries or treatment requirements? Frank positioned himself behind the counter where he could observe tactical operations while staying clear of military activities that exceeded civilian involvement capabilities. Colonel Brennan, ma'am, should I be doing anything specific to support your operation? I want to help but don't want to interfere with military procedures. Colonel Brennan's operational planning incorporated all available resources while maintaining tactical security and civilian safety during operations that involved classified materials and rogue intelligence operatives whose capabilities could exceed normal law enforcement responses. Mr. Donovan, maintain normal diner operations as much as possible to avoid alerting suspects to enhance tactical response. Your establishment provides optimal cover for federal operations. The tactical transformation of the Copper Kettle from civilian business to military command center proceeded with professional efficiency as Colonel Brennan coordinated federal resources with local support to create comprehensive operational capability for apprehending rogue operatives and recovering classified materials. Her command presence impressed everyone present as they witnessed expertise that had been carefully concealed for 3 years. Agent Park's acceptance of Colonel Brennan's superior authority demonstrated federal training that emphasized operational command structure and mission success regardless of personal confusion about circumstances that challenged normal experience. Colonel Brennan, federal tactical teams are coordinating with your operational plan. What are your orders for suspect apprehension when enhanced resources arrive? Colonel Brennan's tactical planning revealed strategic thinking that incorporated multiple variables including suspect capabilities, civilian safety, classified materials recovery, and operational security requirements that exceeded normal law enforcement procedures. Agent Park: these suspects will attempt coordinated escape when they detect enhanced federal response. We need to maintain current positioning while preparing for tactical engagement that prevents their escape with classified materials. The radio communications that filled the diner provided constant updates on enhanced federal resources and military tactical teams, whose capabilities exceeded normal law enforcement response to criminal activity. Colonel Brennan's operational authority had transformed routine apprehension into classified military operation with national security implications that justified enhanced response procedures. Colonel Brennan, Enhanced Tactical Teams report. Readiness for coordinated operation. The radio announced with military precision that reflected operational urgency and command authority. Pentagon Special Operations Command confirms your tactical authority and requests operational updates for classified materials recovery procedures. Colonel Brennan's response demonstrated command capabilities that impressed federal agents, whose training had prepared them to recognize superior military leadership and tactical expertise. Command: operation proceeding according to classified protocols. Suspect containment established, civilian safety maintained, classified materials. Recovery preparation complete. Initiating tactical phase on my command. The revelation of Colonel Brennan's true identity and operational authority had transformed everything about the tactical situation at the Copper Kettle, though the most dangerous phase of the operation was only beginning as rogue intelligence. Operatives prepared to discover that their carefully planned escape had been compromised by someone whose capabilities exceeded anything they had anticipated encountering in a small Montana diner. Colonel Brennan's tactical coordination with enhanced federal resources proceeded with military precision as specialized teams positioned themselves to execute coordinated apprehension of rogue operatives whose escape plans had been compromised by intelligence gathering that exceeded their operational security assumptions. The arrival of Pentagon tactical specialists transformed the Copper Kettle's parking lot into a sophisticated command center equipped with communication systems, surveillance technology, and operational capabilities that surpassed anything available to civilian law enforcement agencies. The lead suspect's radio communications revealed growing alarm as his team detected enhanced federal presence that exceeded their intelligence about routine law enforcement capabilities in rural Montana. Control: we have significant escalation in tactical response at our location. Federal resources appear to include specialized units that weren't anticipated in operational planning. Request immediate extraction authorization. Colonel Brennan monitored suspect communications through federal interception equipment while coordinating tactical positioning that would prevent escape while maintaining operational security for classified materials recovery procedures. Her strategic planning incorporated multiple variables including suspect capabilities, civilian safety requirements, and intelligence preservation that demanded surgical precision rather than overwhelming force. Team Alpha: maintain perimeter containment while avoiding direct engagement until all suspects are identified and positioned for coordinated apprehension. Colonel Brennan commanded through secure military communications. These operatives possess classified intelligence that must be recovered intact rather than destroyed during tactical engagement. Agent Park positioned federal personnel according to Colonel Brennan's tactical directives while maintaining coordination with local law enforcement agencies whose support provided essential operational capabilities despite their limited training for military-level tactical operations. His professional respect for superior command authority had replaced initial skepticism about civilian involvement in federal operations. Colonel Brennan: federal tactical teams report readiness for coordinated operation. Agent Park announced his communication, reflecting acceptance of military command structure that superseded normal federal operational procedures. All suspects are contained within established perimeter. Civilian safety protocols are maintained. Sheriff Tommy Valdez coordinated county resources with military operational requirements while processing the transformation of his peaceful community into the center of classified intelligence operations that involve national security threats and rogue military personnel. His department's role in supporting federal operations exceeded anything anticipated during normal law enforcement planning procedures. Colonel Brennan, county perimeter teams report no additional suspect movement on secondary roads, Tommy announced, his professional cooperation demonstrating effective coordination between civilian law enforcement and military operational authority. All escape routes are monitored and controlled according to your tactical requirements. Dr. Elena Vasquez prepared medical equipment for potential casualties while observing tactical operations that revealed her friend's transformation into a military officer whose expertise exceeded anything suggested through 3 years of casual conversation about community events and restaurant management challenges. Her medical readiness provided essential support for operations that could result in injuries requiring immediate treatment. Colonel Brennan, medical support is prepared for any casualty requirements. Elena announced her professional competence, providing reassurance during operations whose complexity exceeded normal medical emergency preparation. Equipment is positioned for immediate response to tactical injuries or civilian medical needs. Rita Morales maintained communication with county dispatch while monitoring federal radio frequencies that provided constant updates on tactical positioning and operational developments during military operations that exceeded normal deputy sheriff training and experience. Her coordination role provided essential liaison between federal operations and local emergency services. Colonel Brennan, County Dispatch confirms that emergency services are standing by for support if tactical operations require additional medical evacuation or civilian assistance, Rita reported. Her professional efficiency demonstrating effective cooperation between multiple agencies during complex operations. Frank positioned himself behind the diner counter where he could observe tactical operations, while maintaining normal business appearance that provided operational cover for military activities. His cooperation with federal operations demonstrated community support that proved essential for maintaining operational security during classified intelligence recovery procedures. Colonel Brennan, ma'am, should I maintain normal diner operations to avoid alerting suspects to enhanced tactical presence? Frank asked, his practical questions reflecting business owner understanding of operational requirements that balanced tactical necessity with civilian safety considerations. Colonel Brennan's strategic assessment of suspect behavior patterns revealed intelligence about rogue operative capabilities and escape procedures that confirmed 18 months of undercover investigation into classified materials theft and unauthorized intelligence transfer to foreign government contacts. Her analytical expertise provided tactical advantages that exceeded normal federal intelligence capabilities. Command. Suspect communications indicate coordinated extraction procedures involving additional personnel positioned throughout regional area. Colonel Brennan reported through secure Pentagon channels. This operation involves systematic intelligence, theft rather than opportunistic criminal activity. Enhanced response authorization required for comprehensive apprehension. The radio response from Pentagon Special Operations Command provided authorization for tactical measures that exceeded normal law enforcement procedures and confirmed Colonel Brennan's operational authority for classified materials recovery and rogue operative apprehension. Colonel Brennan, you are authorized for comprehensive tactical response. All military resources are available for operational support. The tactical engagement that followed demonstrated Colonel Brennan's legendary capabilities as she coordinated simultaneous apprehension of multiple suspects while maintaining operational security for classified intelligence recovery and civilian Safety during military operations that exceeded normal federal law enforcement response procedures. Team Alpha, initiate coordinated apprehension on my command. Colonel Brennan announced through military communications while monitoring suspect positions and escape attempt indicators. Maintain non-lethal engagement protocols while preventing escape and protecting classified materials from destruction. The synchronized tactical response that neutralized all suspect resistance within minutes showcased military operational efficiency and strategic planning that impressed federal agents, whose training had prepared them to recognize superior command capabilities and tactical expertise during high-stakes national security operations. Agent Park coordinated federal personnel with military tactical teams while observing Colonel Brennan's command presence and operational effectiveness during complex operations that involved multiple agencies and specialized capabilities. Colonel Brennan, all suspects are in federal custody. Classified materials have been secured according to Pentagon protocols. The recovery of stolen classified materials revealed the scope of intelligence theft that Colonel Brennan had been investigating. Through her 80-month undercover assignment in Millbrook, advanced encryption technology, weapon system specifications, and intelligence documents had been systematically stolen by rogue operatives with connections to foreign government agencies and organized criminal networks. Command classified. Materials recovery complete, Colonel Brennan reported through secure Pentagon communications. Intelligence theft operation involved systematic compromise of multiple military installations with coordination from foreign government contacts. Recommend immediate security review of all personnel with access to compromised systems. Sheriff Tommy Valdez approached Colonel Brennan with professional respect and personal curiosity about revelations that had transformed his understanding of community members and federal intelligence operations in rural areas. Colonel Brennan, how long have you been investigating these operatives? Was your assignment to Millbrook specifically related to this intelligence theft operation? Sheriff Valdez, my assignment began 18 months ago when Pentagon intelligence detected systematic theft patterns that suggested long-term foreign intelligence operations in this region. Colonel Brennan explained her professional assessment, providing context for her undercover civilian identity. The Copper Kettle's location made it ideal for monitoring suspect activities while maintaining operational cover. Dr. Elena Vasquez studied Colonel Brennan with analytical fascination as she processed the complete transformation of someone whose background had involved classified military operations rather than civilian food service experience. Cassie, Colonel Brennan, your entire identity was constructed for this operation. Everything about your background and personality was part of an undercover assignment. Dr. Vasquez, my core personality and values are genuine, though my background and capabilities were necessarily concealed for operational security. Colonel Brennan replied, her honest assessment providing reassurance about the authenticity of their friendship, despite professional deception requirements. My respect for this community and the relationships I've developed here are completely real. Rita Morales approached Colonel Brennan with questions about ongoing security implications for local law enforcement agencies whose normal operations might be affected by continued federal investigations and intelligence operations in their jurisdiction. Colonel Brennan, should our department be prepared for additional intelligence operations or security threats related to this investigation? Deputy Morales, this operation has eliminated the immediate threat, though Pentagon intelligence will continue monitoring regional activities for additional rogue operative networks, Colonel Brennan explained, her tactical assessment providing realistic expectations about future security requirements. Local law enforcement cooperation has been exemplary and will be recognized in operational reports. Frank approached Colonel Brennan with business owner questions about operational impact and future security considerations for his establishment that had served as the center of classified military operations involving national security, threats, and foreign intelligence activities. Colonel Brennan, ma'am, what happens to the Copper Kettle now? Will there be ongoing federal interest in my business operations? Mr. Donovan, your establishment will return to normal operations with enhanced security monitoring that protects both your business interests and ongoing intelligence requirements, Colonel Brennan assured him, her practical assessment addressing civilian concerns while maintaining operational security. Your cooperation has contributed significantly to national security operations. The federal debriefing that followed revealed the complete scope of intelligence theft operations that had been systematically compromising military installations throughout the region while transferring classified information to foreign government contacts through sophisticated communication networks and coordination procedures that exceeded normal criminal capabilities. Colonel Brennan's 18-month investigation had identified the complete operational structure of rogue intelligence networks, while gathering evidence that would support federal prosecutions and military court-martial proceedings against personnel who had betrayed national security obligations for financial compensation from foreign government agencies. Command, comprehensive intelligence package prepared for Pentagon analysis, Colonel Brennan reported through secure military communications. Rogue operative network has been neutralized with full recovery of stolen classified materials. Recommend immediate security upgrades for all installations identified in compromised intelligence. Reports. Agent Park coordinated evidence processing with military intelligence specialists while maintaining federal jurisdiction over rogue operatives whose criminal activities had violated multiple laws involving espionage, treason, and unauthorized transfer of classified information to foreign government contacts. Colonel Brennan, federal prosecutors are prepared to coordinate with military justice procedures for comprehensive legal response. The community recognition ceremony that followed several weeks later honored Colonel Brennan's exceptional service, while maintaining operational security requirements that protected classified details about intelligence operations and national security procedures. Local officials expressed gratitude for professional dedication that had protected community safety while serving national interests. Mayor Patricia Hendricks presented Colonel Brennan with community recognition for distinguished service that exceeded normal expectations while maintaining the humble civilian identity that had earned respect throughout Millbrook during 3 years of exceptional restaurant service and community involvement. Colonel Brennan, our community has been honored by your presence and protected by your professional dedication, Mayor Hendricks announced during the ceremony attended by local officials and federal representatives. Your service represents the highest traditions of military excellence and personal integrity. Sheriff Tommy Valdez expressed departmental appreciation for Colonel Brennan's cooperation with local law enforcement during operations that had tested county capabilities, while providing valuable training experience for personnel who had participated in federal tactical operations involving national security threats. Colonel Brennan, your leadership during tactical operations provided my department with training opportunities that exceeded anything available through normal law enforcement programs. Tommy acknowledged, his professional respect evident in public recognition of superior military capabilities. Our coordination with federal operations has enhanced county preparedness for future emergency situations. Dr. Elena Vasquez approached Colonel Brennan with personal appreciation for friendship that had enriched her life despite professional deception requirements that had concealed military background and operational responsibilities. Cassie, regardless of your military rank and classified assignments, you've been a genuine friend whose character and integrity I deeply respect. Rita Morales expressed deputy appreciation for Colonel Brennan's tactical expertise and professional cooperation during operations that had exceeded normal law enforcement training while providing valuable experience with federal coordination and military operational procedures. Colonel Brennan, your leadership and expertise have enhanced our department's capabilities and professional development. Frank presented Colonel Brennan with permanent honorary employment at the Copper Kettle, acknowledging 3 years of exceptional service that had exceeded every expectation while concealing military background and operational responsibilities that involved national security operations and classified intelligence activities. Colonel Brennan, you'll always have a place at the Copper Kettle, whether you're serving coffee or serving your country, Frank announced, his emotional gratitude reflecting genuine appreciation for someone whose character had impressed him despite professional deception requirements. Your dedication to excellence in everything you do represents the best qualities of military service and personal integrity. Colonel Brennan's response demonstrated humility and genuine appreciation for community acceptance and support during operations that had required professional deception while maintaining authentic relationships and personal values that reflected military honor and individual character. Thank you all for accepting me as part of your community despite the circumstances of my assignment, Colonel Brennan replied, her sincere gratitude evident in acknowledgement of relationships that had enriched her life during challenging operational requirements. Millbrook will always represent home to me, and these relationships will always be among my most treasured experiences. The Pentagon commendation that Colonel Brennan received several months later recognized exceptional service during intelligence operations that had protected national security, while maintaining operational cover that exceeded normal undercover assignment requirements. Her tactical leadership and investigative excellence had eliminated foreign intelligence threats, while preserving community safety and civilian cooperation. General Patricia Hayes presented Colonel Brennan with the Distinguished Service Medal during ceremonies that honored extraordinary professional achievement while maintaining classification requirements that protected operational details and intelligence procedures from public disclosure. Colonel Brennan, your 18-month operation represents exceptional dedication to national security and professional excellence that reflects the highest traditions of military service, General Hayes announced during the classified ceremony, attended by Pentagon leadership and intelligence specialists. Your tactical expertise and investigative capabilities have protected American interests while eliminating significant foreign intelligence threats. The systematic reforms that followed Colonel Brennan's investigation enhanced security procedures throughout military installations, while implementing improved personnel screening and intelligence protection protocols that would prevent future compromise of classified materials and unauthorized transfer to foreign government contacts. Colonel Brennan's return to the Copper Kettle for occasional visits represented both personal connection to community relationships and professional recognition that her undercover assignment had created genuine bonds that transcended operational requirements. Her continued friendship with local residents demonstrated authentic character that had impressed everyone despite necessary deception about military background. Frank's welcome during each visit reflected genuine appreciation for someone whose character and work ethic had set exceptional standards while maintaining professional responsibilities that exceeded anything he had imagined possible in civilian employees. Colonel Brennan, your coffee and conversation are always welcome here. You've shown us what true excellence looks like. The legacy of Colonel Brennan's assignment continued to influence community understanding of military service and national security operations while providing local law enforcement with enhanced training experience and federal cooperation that improved emergency response capabilities and tactical coordination procedures. Years later, when residents of Millbrook discussed remarkable events that had transformed their peaceful community into the center of national security operations, they remembered Colonel Cassandra Brennan as someone whose exceptional character had been evident long before her military expertise was revealed, proving that true honor and dedication recognize no disguise when lives depend on getting it right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.